We're live. Here we are. Hey kids, comics. Here we are, silver-haired, bronze-age babe, hosting another live dive with my friend Rob. Cheers,
5 o'clock
Rob.
Eastern time zone. Cheers.
You know what that means. It's time for cocktails. So
I feel like
yay.
we need this. Last time I drank milk, but last night so for your people who watch your channel, Sarah and I live in a Midwestern college town like Ivytown, home of Professor Ray Palmer, the Atom. And we had a kind of thunderstorm that came through last night with lightning that would create a scarlet speedster. And I did not sleep hardly at all. So I definitely need this.
And I'm going to tell you that I apparently slept through almost all of it.
I hate you.
Yeah. What can I tell you? So thank you for watching the live dive. We are celebrating, as you can tell from Rob's attire and my pride flags, we are celebrating Pride Month as it comes to an end here for 2020. It's been an interesting Pride Month, Rob. Who would have thought the Supreme Court would finally say the obvious, which is you really shouldn't be able to fire people just because you think they're gay. So, yay.
Cheers to that.
Cheers to that. So, yes, exactly.
And they also ruled, if I recall, in favor of some transgender protections last week, right?
Oh, I think so.
I can't recall. But yeah, it's been a strange month. I mean, and today is technically Pride Day, right? So today is the 51st anniversary of the Stonewall Uprising.
Yes.
So it is known as Global Pride Day. This particular year, I'm celebrating less gay pride and more gay gluttony and sloth.
Yeah, it's not that I'd actually be out at a Pride Festival because it's hot and I don't like to be outside when it's hot. So actually, this works out better for me. So
hey, it actually does. We're in the air conditioning, and
yep.
I'd be sweating. I'd be sweating if I was outside.
I know. I don't like to do that.
I don't have tuxedo go-go shorts.
We have somebody in the chat, Per Piata. I'm so sorry if I can't pronounce that right. Hello, thank you for joining us. Oh, Caleb Leland. Oh, what a thrill. Still at work, wanted to say hi. Happy Pride Day, everybody. Much love. Caleb has been following me since my Tumblr days. And
oh, wow. Comics in the Attic.
Comics in the Attic. And he says such lovely things in the comics or comment section. And I'm really thankful, Caleb, that you follow me. And so there you go. Thank you very much. Oh, and
so it's Per Piata.
Per Piata. I was close, very close. Yeah. Well, thank you both for joining us in the chat and to everyone who is it. So anyway, our live dive today is about the gays in comics and
what?
or lack thereof. But I think any discussion about this obviously starts with, is this Fred Wortham? Is that his first name, Rob?
Frederick Wortham, yeah.
Frederick Wortham. Yeah. And I know you have some slides that you can show relative to how that guy put the brakes on any kind of inclusion back in the 50s and 60s.
Right. Well, so Sarah and I were actually kind of discussing this just before the conversation. We were saying how I think Sarah, you were saying like these baseless claims of homosexuality in comics, right? And I was kind of pushing back a little bit on that.
Yeah.
The fact that, Wonder Woman was created as a result of a polyamorous relationship, and so naturally the role playing of dominance and submission had worked its way into those covers. And then after Frederick Wortham, she sort of becomes a virginal Disney princess, which is partly why I think that character has suffered over the decades.
No kidding. Yeah.
Because who she is at her core is sexuality.
Right.
And then I think we were talking about Batman and Robin and how, that you have a young ward. Mm-hmm. And you were saying that was a baseless homosexual claim. And I kind of was pushing back to say that there are some easy panels to show why Mr. Wortham might do this. Now, how should I do this? I should click the share screen button.
Share screen button, and then you get a choice. And while you do that, I will say, hello, Just a Rican. Hi, Rod. How are you? Thank you so much for coming. I really do appreciate it. Really do.
Okay.
And I will click on this so that there we go. And I'll
So
even
all
make
you
it
have
big.
to do is all you have to do is Google Batman and Robin in bed, and you'll get a series of pictures. Come on, Dick, a cold shower and a big breakfast. And then, yes, they have separate headboards, kind of like the Lucy and Ricky of the 50s. So maybe they're separate beds, but he is in bed with a minor like a disgraced pop star. And I don't know about you, but I like waking up to see a big package in the morning. But
for God's sake. And they say vaudeville's dead, but it's not. Alive and well. Okay. Well,
that comment. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
But the other thing I wanted to kind of comment on that.
Sure.
And are we on the right screen here?
Oh, do you want me to go back? So
yeah.
Oops.
So let's go back. No, sorry. Let's go back to you and me. All right. Yeah. Okay. So here we are. All right. So, the other thing that the New York Times had an article about this a couple years ago called "The Lost History of Gay Adult Adoption." So I bring this up because prior to gay marriage, as a way of hiding from the heterosexuals, if I wanted to marry somebody and I wanted them to have my property and or to be my next of kin to speak from health standpoints, I might adopt someone. So it wasn't obviously a very common option. You probably had to be wealthy like Bruce Wayne, that maybe have some social influence, but that was a way, gay adult adoption was a way of sort of circumventing the lack of, wealth transfer.
Well, I've always said that coming out stories are the equivalent of origin stories. And, we're all superheroes in one way or the other. So we can do some workarounds. So, and speaking of workarounds, so after Wortham, got the comics code going, it was very hard to find images that and scenarios that might lend itself to, homosexual relationships, but that didn't stop me from looking for the gay. And I found a bunch. And in fact, if I can do a share screen here.
And while you do that, I want to just comment that our friend from Italy, Per Piata, mentioned that one of the MGM hairdressers, Sidney Gerloff, did the same thing, adopting a son. And what Per Piata may not know is that here in the United States, a 38-year-old congressman claims to have adopted a 19-year-old Cuban as his son. Yes. Now, I am not going to speculate on their nocturnal activities of crime fighting.
This is not our role. This is not our role. We simply bring you the news. It is yours to interpret. So on your screen, you will see here that I have on my Tumblr way back when, I had a series called Out of Context, where I would find pictures where I found the gay. And interestingly enough, it didn't get a lot of love back in the day, which surprises me because here, Gotta Start Her Breathing, that's actually Lois Lane giving mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, and Tumblr flagged that as inappropriate and made me take it down. The only cure for heartbreak is love. You'll see love again. I just can't, where are everybody's hands there? But that's, I don't know. Mary Robin, people know I love Mary Robin. And here's the nurse saying it's only until she gets well. That's all that's important right now. This is Bonnie Taylor, my airline stewardess. I'm not going to tear myself to pieces over this ridiculous feeling. It's nonsense. Amy got over it, so will I. It's like, well, maybe Amy didn't. Call Amy up. I found this on Tumblr, and I thought it was great. I never felt a thrill when a boy kissed me. Where is the fascination? I don't feel.
Oh, that is incredible.
Isn't that wonderful? Isn't that great? I could feel her tremble all over as I held her while Clark came toward us. Friend of yours, Bonnie? Situation that many lesbians know from going out to dinner Are you two alone? It's like, no, we're actually together. Oh, darling, you know how deeply you've been here. Give love one more chance. With me. Couple more
Those
here.
are great. Oh my
God.
gosh.
Oh, I love this one. I've come alive through another woman's kisses.
Whoa.
If ghostly lovers can find each other again somewhere, somehow I will too. Another woman's kisses will do that to you. And finally, this is my all-time favorite. This is another Bonnie Taylor. I don't know why I burst into tears when Mona and I were alone in our hotel room. And you've brought me happiness, Bonnie. I knew I could trust you with my heart. And speaking of a headboard, there's one now. So there you go.
That's incredible.
That is, you kind of had to go looking for the gay, and I found some, but maybe not.
And those are no longer on Tumblr, right? Like, so have you migrated those to your Instagram channel?
I should. I think you can still find me on Tumblr. I'm SLS blog on Tumblr. Okay. I just haven't been adding stuff to it in a long time. So, yeah. But then the other thing that I noticed in my collection, things really go dormant in the silver and bronze age, truly. With the exception being that as the Bronze Age dawns, things get a little hostile. And I found a couple of examples from my collection. This is a panel from 1969 from DC Showcase. Here, I'm going to make myself big here.
That's okay. Go ahead.
Yeah.
That's the Nightmaster.
The Nightmaster. This is a Denny O'Neil story.
The late Denny O'Neil.
I know, and I'm not going to hold it against him. I really am not. But the Nightmaster starts out life as a rock star, and because he's getting all the girls, the guys are really jealous of him and making fun of his long hair and that he's not really ready to rumble with them. And so what are you going to do about it? Hit me with your purse. Like, yeah, okay. Same thing happens to a guy in Young Love, where he's a chef, and his name is Paul, or is it really Paulette? And then they call him a sissy, and the girl in the story says, "No, he's not a sissy."
Wow.
I know. Isn't this? Now, for those of you who haven't seen my Women's Livers from Space video on this, you want to look it up. It's called Supergirl Swipes Right. And there's a story of Supergirl's gay panic in this that's worth it. But finally, my favorite, although because I hate it, and it's really nauseating. This is an issue of Young Romance that came out in 1974, I think. And that story there, Strange Girl, the story they dared us to print. Liz isn't interested in boys, if you know what I mean. And the story is about a tomboy who likes to, hang out with her dad. Oh, thank you, Rod. Thanks so much for stopping by. We'll see you next time around.
Yeah, it sounds like he's got to prep for his show. Does he have a channel too?
He does, and it's a fantastic channel. And he does a lot of great stuff. So check out Just a Rican and his comics, because he's good.
Definitely.
So this story, she is not gay. She ends up getting the guy, but this is just mean, I think. Yeah. I just think this is a real low point. And I can tell you from my perspective, if I were, by the time I was 13, I kind of understood what was going on with me. And if I had walked into Mills Pharmacy and seen this, it would have killed me. It just would have ripped a part of my soul out, really.
Yeah.
So,
and it's sort of similar. I mean, actually, in a weird way, I'll say that I had Rod saying that he's got a giveaway going on. So, okay.
Oh, good. Then it's going to be good. If Rod's
going to be a package that you can have delivered to you in bed.
One can only hope.
So no, but it's funny that you say that, because like you and I have kind of commented before, but at the age of 13 in the early 90s, you look at like a lot of gay cinema, and you really only had two stories at the time, which was the coming out story, which is then you're kind of abandoned by all your friends and family, and you kind of have to force yourself to make a new tribe.
Yeah.
So that would be one story, or the other was that you died of AIDS. And I have to say, looking at that at the age of 13, I think for myself personally, I was just like, that doesn't look like fun.
Yeah.
I don't want to invite to that party.
What is about? There's nothing there for me. Yeah.
There's nothing happy about this.
Yeah, not a thing.
So, yeah, so it's interesting to see. Like, I can see what you're saying, like about that young love. You had a great suggestion that I'd love for you to pitch now, in case anyone from DC Comics, Steve Orlando, Phil Jimenez, anybody watching.
Listen, DC, you can make this up to me if you produce even a one-shot, like 100-page one-shot, where you
just keep the title "Young Romance."
It's a romance only. Yeah, you can keep this in copyright. You can keep characters like Bonnie Taylor or Mary Robin on RN, and you give writing and art duties to members of the LGBTQ community, and you let them tell some romance stories their own way. I would love to see, a Bonnie Taylor airline stewardess story. Like if you took the original and just replaced it with a guy or with a woman, I think it would be great.
Freudian slip.
I know. So that's how you can make it up to me, DC. And I know.
I love that idea. I think that would be great to do like an all gay or non-binary young romance, just in celebration of it. I think that could be that would work. Like a good one shot, that would work.
That would be cool. So Captain UK Pop Culture Fun is here. Hello, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
It's the UK. That must be 10 o'clock, right there.
Wow.
If you're calling from the UK.
Gee, I hope you're. Either you've had too many. We salute you.
Or we'll catch up.
So, Rob, you're going to talk about when things started to get a little better in the DC comic book world.
Well, I think it kind of happens slowly in the 80s. You start to see, well, because I think you brought up something in the 70s. You see a lot of gay panic, and I think you've always seen that. And we'll talk about Batman. We'll return to Batman and Robin after Wortham again in a moment. But Alan Moore starts to incorporate some of the characters. I think Frank Miller, when he did Dark Knight Returns, his Joker is a little bit effeminate.
Yep.
So I think he was kind of playing on the Cesar Romero, who was in the Batman TV show, was gay, not outwardly then, but I think Frank Miller is kind of playing on some of those dynamics. And Captain UK said it's around 10:15. So I definitely hope he's pouring himself a drink, or he or she is pouring themselves a drink.
And Per Piata is talking about role models on TV, Paul Lynde or Charles Nelson Reilly. Yeah, I mean, that's all you had.
That was really all you had. Yeah. And when I was 14, Wilson Cruz, over this shoulder there, was on My So-Called Life as the first gay teenager. Yeah. And now is a character on Star Trek, and has been working with GLAAD for many years. So that's kind of why I've got Wilson Cruz there. So I'm still getting used to the. I'm getting used to my orientation out of here.
Oh, really? Well, as long as we could help. We're here for you.
Yeah. So you start to see there's sort of two branches of things that start to happen. I think you start to see casual inclusion. And what I mean by that is you get, this is Superman #4. This is the John Byrne. This is right after the post-crisis relaunch of Superman. And you get the character of Captain Maggie Sawyer. Okay. Now, she does not come, she's not like a lesbian on page 1. That doesn't happen until Superman Volume 2, issue number 15, where Maggie Sawyer appears on the cover titled Wings. And that Superman 15 is the first Maggie Sawyer cover. So if anyone is a fan of Maggie Sawyer's, you go. But what I actually kind of love about this particular issue is that it kind of starts to talk. This is 1987, but it kind of shows like everything that's wrong with what happens in the 90s is that you get muscly men with unrealistic guns with names like dead and blood in the title.
Yeah.
So that's the one way that the 90s start to go. So you get this kind of casual inclusion and I'm going to return to that in a moment, or you'll get something like the launch of Vertigo, which is continuing in the vein of like Alan Moore. This was an imprint from DC that took characters that were kind of on the fringe, like the Doom Patrol, Swamp Thing, Hellblazer. And I'm going to return to this again, but the 90s start to split into that path. And so within the superhero titles, you get Captain Maggie Sawyer, who's one of the first kind of mainstream supporting characters. This was just by coincidence. I mean, I picked this up because you and I are both Superman fans.
Yep.
And this is the Flash, and you can see it's actually autographed by William Messner Loebs. And I think there was something interesting because when I had him autograph this, I would think I was 14 at the time. And so now in retrospect, I wonder if he thought I was having him autograph it, because in this issue, Wally West is the Flash at this time, and he's having a conversation with the Pied Piper, who comes out. And they have the conversation, and there's actually Wally's kind of being like a bro, and it's like, well, you can always tell that certain guys have certain signals, right? You can always tell who's gay. Like the Joker's gay, right? Like, because Frank Miller said so, and Cesar Romero is gay, right? And Wally doesn't say that, but that's subtext. And Pied Piper's kind of like, well, no, I don't think the Joker has sexuality. He's just this psychopath.
Yeah.
I don't know of any other gay villains except for me, of course. And then Wally kind of beats himself up for not realizing how insensitive he is. So our main hero is actually like, I could do better with how I treat people. And of course, Superman comes in, and then there's a story where the Pied Piper comes in and helps Superman and Flash rescue Jimmy Olsen, whose life is at stake. So casual inclusion continues. That was August of 1991, Flash number 53, a few months before North Star comes out at Marvel Comics. Now, I want to give a shout out. You and I are really, our conversation about inclusion is really exclusively limited to DC because we're both DC fans.
Yeah.
But I have to give a shout out to Marvel, because I think DC does a great job of incorporating bisexual women and lesbian characters, but Marvel, I think, really does a better job of bringing in gay male characters like Wiccan and Hawken. Now, this one is, you may wonder why I'm pulling this one up. This is Batman 475. It is the first appearance of Renee Montoya, who we should talk about in a moment. Again, this is just sort of casual inclusion, supporting characters, and we'll talk about, superhero explosion in a moment. But Renee Montoya shows up here. She was a character originally created for the Batman the Animated Series, which, Sarah, if you haven't watched that is worth watching.
I know. I am woefully behind on that. Everyone raves about it, and I haven't done diddly on it.
The pilot episode is a Man-Bat.
Oh, well, jeez. Can I go back to Maggie Sawyer for just one sec?
Great, because I was going to go back to her.
Oh, there you go. Why don't you talk about that then?
So this is an issue that you need to have. Anyone who watches the SHBAB channel knows that you have a Time magazine that celebrates Superman's 50th anniversary. This is a 80-page giant celebrating Superman's golden anniversary. It includes Wonder Woman Superman team up by George Perez making out. But in this Lex Luthor story, Lex Luthor is trying to blackmail Maggie Sawyer for being gay. And she's sort of like, I'm not having any of it. And the other reason why, Sarah, I want you to buy this issue is because Superman fights Man-Bat. So there you go. I mean, this is made for you. It has lesbians. It has Wonder Woman.
Why do I not have that already? What the heck is wrong with me? God. All right.
Yes. So there is.
The eBay lines will be on fire after this thing is done here. So
yes.
Well, what I wanted to talk about with Maggie Sawyer, and I'll make myself big here, is that in 1995, there was this is a 4-issue arc of Metropolis SCU, Special Crimes Unit, and that is Maggie Sawyer. And
badass.
Yeah, total badass. And she, her relationship with her girlfriend is the, kind of B storyline in this, how it informs her work with the department and how she's a workaholic and all of that kind of stuff. But it's interesting. Although I was telling Rob earlier that the girlfriend, her name is Toby, but apparently no one over at the editorial offices of DC cared that much, because Toby was spelled alternately Toby, Tobey, Tobie. I mean, it's like, oh yeah, whatever. You're the girlfriend, you're miserable because she's always at work. So,
and it may have been an editor who might not have thought to explore an alternate spelling for Toby.
Right, exactly. Shout out to Rutger from Holland. Hello. You were kind. Yes, wow. He is fantastic. I met him on Instagram, and he has an amazing feed. He's got an amazing collection. So look him up on the Instagram and subscribe to his feed because he's got some wonderful books. They're just drool worthy. So there you go. So thanks for being here. We appreciate it. So now,
I'm hoping we'll see like the Gray Man pop up in here or some, some of the other folks that you have. Magic Lasso. I'm starting to like become fans of theirs too.
Oh, one more thing about Maggie Sawyer. Should we talk about this? Shall we talk about
Sure.
Yeah. Let me make myself.
Because this is sort of that. So that's Renee Montoya on the cover there.
Yeah,
right?
we're going. I'm sorry. Yeah, Maggie Sawyer's in this story.
Yes.
Because, and that's the only other thing I'll say is that of the 3 lesbians in the DC universe that I've come across, they've, just like in real life, they've all dated each other.
They've all know each other. They've all swapped U-Hauls.
Exactly. It's like, okay, girls, we get you. But hey, it's pretty good. So this is a pretty seminal story featuring Renee Montoya, and she is outed in this, basically by brutally so, and how she interacts with her police department colleagues as a result of this. And Greg Rucka wrote this and did a really wonderful job with it, with one teeny tiny nit from my perspective. And at one point, there's a scene where Renee is having a conversation with her partner. And the partner has basically mad at her that she didn't tell him that she's a lesbian. And she's
when you say partner, we don't mean romantic partner.
I mean,
we're talking about
police partner, her
partner.
work partner, her work partner. And so you have this whole thing where this scene is about him and how angry he is.
Is that Bullock?
No, Chris. Yeah, that guy. Yeah.
Okay.
Because she's saying, listen, my last partner was Harvey Bullock. I'm going to, why would I tell you anything? Or anyway, she lets him off the hook and basically apologizes to him. And I'm just here to tell you that, there are other ways of dealing with that. And, rather than having him say, I'm mad at you, what every gay person would like to hear, I think, and I think I speak for all of us, is I'm sorry you didn't think you could tell me, and that's on me. So,
and that's actually been my experience too. I think a lot of people have said those words, right? So like,
yeah. I mean, it's a very common thing. Or my favorite is, oh well, I knew.
Right.
It's like, well, thanks for sharing your feelings about how I'm so stressed out about this. It's not about you. But this is, listen, it's a minor quibble for a piece that I know means a lot to a lot of people, to have this character and to have this storyline. It's a very special book. So
right. Well, and I want to kind of just circle back, kind of tying things together. We started this conversation talking about Frederick Wortham. Right after that is when the Comics Code happened. So it's not even just some of the homosexual elements that get toned down. It's murder. It's the severed heads of Chuck Gaines's horror comics and those kind of things. And then in the 70s, it's actually kind of the horror comics that start to bring some of these elements back. And it's kind of like in the 90s that you get Vertigo, which is all the supernatural titles.
Mm-hmm.
The Sandman, I think, has done a really good job of bringing in lots of gay representation. So even if you looked at for me, I didn't connect with Ricky Vasquez on My So-Called Life. He wore eyeliner. That wasn't the kind of gay that I am. Obviously I'm flamboyant in other ways. the Sandman I thought was great because there's a great story called A Game of You, and you're dealing with characters who are where gender identity and gender expression may not necessarily align with their biological gender, where you have issues of sexual orientation, and as Per Piata is saying that the 70s, that's when the code is relaxed and you start to get the horror comics that start to give us things like Watchmen.
Yep.
And so we start to get this kind of casual inclusion, but I feel like Vertigo really puts it forward. And Steve Orlando is a bisexual writer. He's the current writer of Wonder Woman. And he there's a list of comics that he says are trying to gay comics. And what I didn't know is that when Vertigo launched in 1993, and I was 13 years old, I was big in the Sandman and his sister Death and the other Sandman, the Golden Age Sandman there. There was a series called Enigma, written by Peter Milligan, who would write Shade the Changing Man, which deals a lot with identity. And he is also, Peter Milligan is sort of like the driving force behind the 1993 Nightfall storyline where Batman's back gets broken. The character, he's sort of an obsessive compulsive, and he has a girlfriend and his sex is scheduled on Tuesday, so he'll see you next Tuesday. And what happens is in the plot of the story is that the villains, main character Michael is a comic book fan. The villains start to come to life. The hero, who is the Enigma, starts to come to life. And Michael's trying to figure out what it means that these characters from an obscure 3-issue comic book series are coming to life in his world. And eventually he kind of falls in love with the character. So it would be like me falling in love with like Nightwing. And what's interesting about this is that, right away you start to get, this is the opening splash page where the main character and the superhero are together in bed. And this is suggested for mature readers, of course, but you start to see an embrace of sexuality and a relaxing of the codes. And this is a real, this comic is a real exploration of what does it mean to embrace your sexuality and discover your sexuality. And toward the end, the main character even has the choice of having everything undone. And he says, no, I'll stick with things the way they are. So if anyone likes, Vertigo comics and you like gay stories, this might have flown under your radar. And it's an 8-issue series and it's absolutely incredible. And it was part of the Vertigo launch and I highly recommend it. The other thing that's been fun is that in the very first or second issue, the main character gets hit on by a guy who's a supporting character and he punches that man. And then later in this issue, episode 7, where where you just saw the splash page of what happened to the main character that clearly he's repressing, you start to get the letter writers from issue 2 who are saying, why would you include a scene where, a guy gets hit on by another guy and his reaction at violence? You're sort of condoning it, not knowing that this story would take this plot twist. And one of the letter writers that the editor mentioned is a man named Chris Cooper. Now, Chris Cooper of New York. Now, Chris Cooper of New York, in 1993, there is a Chris Cooper of New York in 1993 who is an editor at Marvel Comics. And he would go on to write Star Trek, and he would include a gay character in Star Trek, in the Star Trek comics. And I don't know how to pronounce it.
It's Vertigo.
That's the nature of Vertigo. Well, Chris Cooper, the editor at Marvel Comics, I suspect writes that letter complaining about the homophobia in Enigma, and I would love to know what he thinks of it now. But Warren Ellis, who is actually being canceled right now as we speak, had a newsletter where he said, there was one issue of the Marvel swimsuit special. Now, this is again the 90s for you, where you instead of actually having something of substance, you just get literally pinups.
Oh my god,
poor pinups. But they were commenting that there was one particular issue where these characters, they said, boy, this just seems really gay. And there's the Thor. Do you like how I sound like an old man saying it?
I know.
The Thor.
There's the Thor.
Chris Cooper edited this. That's Luke Cage. I mean, I don't know how you can get more. That's my brother saying I have great taste in comics. Thanks.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does, John. We know.
I mean, here's Spider-Man. I mean, that is like an Abercrombie and Fitch thing. I mean, could you get more homo? And even look at Storm and Kitty Pryde over here.
Yeah, that's
right. So yes, this thing gets very, very gay very fast. But the reason why I bring all this up, and here's the plot twist from last time. Last time I surprised you with the connection of Darwin Cook to Neil Adams. Chris Cooper of New York recently was identified in the news as the Harvard-educated birdwatcher for whom Amy Cooper called the cops on. And so he is a gay hero in real life, and maybe he could edit our young romance comic for DC Comics.
Oh,
cheers to that.
It is $1 million idea.
Or at least a couple thousand.
I feel the multiverse coming together with this. I really do. So
yeah,
awesome. So, and then we find ourselves at Batwoman.
Batwoman begins.
Batwoman begins.
You and I both have this one, and she debuts in what is post Infinite Crisis in the DC universe. And she is the perfect response to Frederick Wortham. Why? Because the original Batwoman and the Bat-girl, Betty Kane, and this is Catherine Kane, they were originally created after Frederick Wortham's seduction of the innocent, accusing Batman and Robin of being gay. And so those female characters were brought in to squash the gay panic. And now we reintroduce her as a lesbian. Yay.
The world is great sometimes, isn't it? How it just rolls the way you want it to roll.
It really does.
Oh,
I'm going to hold up another one. This is Greg Rucka, who did, this is Final Crisis. Greg Rucka did another one. Now, this I'll be honest, this is not the best Batwoman cover. That's a little too tight for me.
Really?
But J.H. Williams and Greg Rucka would go on to do Batwoman and Detective Comics, where Batman is taken off the board for a little while, and a lesbian Batwoman is given the title Detective Comics for what DC is named after.
Right.
So I think that was a pretty good stamp. The other thing that happens in 52 is our friend Renee Montoya that we mentioned earlier becomes the Question. And I kind of love this cover. I love this sort of Banksy stencil. And if we're talking about young romance, I would love to see a Question series, or maybe even the Question could appear as a story in young romance.
The possibilities are endless. And
instead of having like a detective agency like Jessica Jones, like, wouldn't it be great if the only way you could communicate with her is like through street graffiti? I think that like you give that to a really good artist. Like a really good artist could play with that. You could even drop some plot points in there. This is the other part of Final Crisis, and there's again another Renee Montoya as the faceless Question. So I had to share that.
Speaking of Renee, I will make myself big here to show the current Lois Lane series. It got halted because of the pandemic, but the last three issues are coming in. And this is the cover for number 10. And Renee Montoya is a co-star in this series with Lois Lane. And in the penultimate issue, it's actually Renee Montoya's lesbianism that saves the day. It is absolutely because of her emotional connection with another woman that the big bad is dealt with effectively.
I might have to read that.
Yeah.
That's one of those, you and I have talked about this, and we have that debate, like, do you read the single issues or do you read the trade? And I think you're selling me on this one. I'm definitely going to read this in one form or another.
Yeah. I would wait till it all comes out in trade, which of course I'm going to get.
Appropriately so for Pride weekend.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I'll get that one too. I have all of the issues. I have all of the variant covers because I love Lois Lane. If anyone watches my videos, you know that I really love Lois Lane, and so I have to have everything that Lois Lane. I will say though that this is Greg Rucka did the story on this one too. It's kind of lost its thread a little bit. It's gone from kind of a very topical news of the day, ripped from the headlines kind of approach to a more supernatural kind of thing. And I think there are elements of that I just don't understand because I don't read current comics. You know what I mean? So I think someone who's up to date is going to get it quicker and better than I will. But listen, I still love it. I will still be getting the trade because I'll be curious to see all the other stuff they put in it, particularly whoever they get to write the opening essay and what they want to say about it. But
right.
I've really loved it. So to have, a lesbian character, front and center, helping solve the crimes, give me a break,
Yeah. And when they released the Batwoman Detective Comics, didn't Rachel Maddow do the intro to that trade?
She did the, let me see if I can have it.
You have one of those.
I have. Yeah. This is, oh wait, please don't fall. Yeah, this is the deluxe edition of, I'll make it big. Make me big. Of the Batwoman Elegy. And indeed, Rachel Maddow writes the introduction on this thing. So this is a beautiful book.
Tough female journalist who...
Yeah, it's interesting. She said, and she's coming at it from, because this is the story arc where she was kicked out of the army for being gay. So it was a don't ask, don't tell.
Yeah. So that's where you start to really see completely rounded characters. Whereas some of the earlier introductions of Renee Montoya and Maggie Sawyer and what have you, and even Pied Piper is sort of like, okay, they just happen to be gay. Mm-hmm. Whereas I think that the big point that you're making there with the don't ask, don't tell is that in many ways that she becomes Batwoman because she cannot serve in the military.
Right. And
so it becomes kind of hard coded in her DNA as that's who she is.
Yeah, and I keep noodling with the idea of coming out as an origin story because there's loss. On some level, there's going to be loss, whether it's your family or your friends or your job, your son. You know what I mean? And so there's a natural kind of connection, I think, between LGBTQ folks and what a superhero is,
secret identities.
Yeah.
The X-Men, I think, is a great metaphor for it. You turn into a teenager and you get your superpower and you realize you're different from everyone.
Yeah.
Right? So that could easily slip into a metaphor. And that's why actually Marvel's first hero was North Star, who comes out as gay in 1991. And now just recently they've made one of the original X-Men, Bobby Drake, the Iceman, gay. And that was partly because, the other person on his team is a telepath, Jean Grey, and she's just sort of like, well, I could read your mind.
Right.
This is what's going on. Don't you know this?
Right.
And actually, she has the conversation that you were saying that you sort of wish people had, right? Like she's sort of like, yeah, I get this is what's going on, and it's okay.
Yeah.
And your stress, you don't need to stress. You don't need to worry about it. So that's where I said in some ways, like you and I are talking about DC because we love DC. But I do think Marvel in some ways has done a better job with some of this.
Probably,
all that being said, kind of connecting back to the origin story and connecting back to looking at those young romance comics and characters from a homosexual light. I was not going to mention this character. This is a DC comic character. It's the Green Lantern. But this week, the 80th anniversary issue of Green Lantern came out. It's the 80th anniversary of this gentleman here in the red shirt, the original Green Lantern, Alan Scott. And Ranger Sly is here.
Ranger Sly. Oh, Jesse Lynch. Hello. Rachel's on our TV. Mine too.
But I was going to say, they when the New 52 launched, they things are a little bit in flux with the Justice Society, as they always seem to have been ever since the Silver Age, really. And they've made Ranger Sly saying hi. Hey, Ranger Sly. Just in time. We're talking about the Green Lantern. And they made Alan Scott in 2012 gay. And what I wasn't going to mention it because, again, the character wasn't originally designed to be gay like Batwoman. But you can see in the artwork, this is Gary Frank, and he's the gentleman that drew that Superman Secret Origin story that I recommended to you.
Yeah.
Put you on the Metallo video.
Yep.
And we're going to have to mention Jesse Lynch talking about the Batwoman covers. We're going to have to mention that. What this story does is it actually goes through, like when Alan Scott in his origin, he's a train engineer. There's an accident. And in the original panels in the Golden Age, his friend Jimmy dies. And Alan Scott here is talking to Jimmy's mother. And she's sort of like, why were you, a well-dressed man like you on this train? Well, why were you friends with my son? And why are you coming to visit me? Mm-hmm. But then she sort of says, you know, my son had a light about him and there was always a darkness. And so she's speaking in this 1940s way of saying, you know, this coded, you know, she understands that her son was gay and was different. And she kind of says to Alan Scott that if you have this light inside you too, it is your duty to help others. Mm-hmm. And so they've kind of, I wasn't going to mention it, but this came out, this 80th anniversary of the Green Lantern. And because this is the character and this is such a kind of foundational celebration of this character, they are embracing that gay element for Alan Scott, which shows a level of progress that we didn't have in the 90s and that you didn't have at MILF Pharmacy Rack in the 70s.
I sure didn't. I did not. Absolutely. One more thing, and then we'll get to a question or two in the chat. There's an issue. This is a dead man. Let me make myself big here. Dark Mansion of Forbidden Love. This is a 3-issue arc from a few years.
Which is a combination of 2 titles. I should have mentioned. Dead Man was one masthead, and there was originally in the 70s Dark Mansion of Forbidden Love.
Yeah, Dark Mansion of Forbidden Love was a gothic love story book that only lasted 4 issues.
Capitalizing on the dark shadows.
Yeah. And it was actually really good. I have a bunch of those, and it's fun. You know, it's gothic. It's ghosts. I love ghosts. But what's interesting about this story is that, number one, our heroine, she's not, the typical blonde running away from danger. She actually, in the book, looks like a normal human being. She happens to be bisexual. She happens to be in a relationship, have a friendship with a non-binary person named Sam. And she gets to explain to Dead Man about pronouns. Sam prefers they, them, theirs. And she lectures the superhero about what that is. It's remarkable. It just shows to go you what some really good writing and some wonderful intention can do. So that, you know, I mean, seriously, you can walk into a comic shop now and see yourself. You really can. Where before there was no way. You know, just
if you can't even see yourself, you know, my brother. One last thing I'm going to mention. My brother, who is watching, he has a son. I have a nephew who now. This was when, you know, my nephew was like 11 or 12, and I think my brother was trying to explain, you know, who his uncle is, and he thought about giving him that Renee Montoya. Oh, did I freeze?
I bet I know what your brother is trying to explain because you've frozen up. Try again. What was he trying to explain, Rob?
Am I here? He was trying to explain what my plot twist was. What some guys call it the cliffhanger. No, I'm teasing.
Yeah.
So that was totally inappropriate. Sorry. No, he was trying to explain, you know, my identity, but he was going to give my nephew the Renee Montoya Gotham Central story, and I kind of said don't, because it's actually very messy. It's a very brutal coming out. It's not a very good story. Whereas now, you know, this just came out this week. So again, I had that Alan Scott story, and then this is called You Brought Me the Ocean. This is kind of the future of DC Comics as they start to move away from what I'm going to call single issue monthly periodicals to done in one graphic novels. Written by different creators. Alex Sanchez has won awards for gay fiction, and then Julie Moreau is the artist behind Blue is the Warmest Color, which was a kind of a highlight of gay cinema a few years ago. And you may be looking at this and thinking, like, how does this relate to DC Comics? Well, the character here is Aqualad, who is Jackson Hyde, who is the son of Black Manta, who is gay. And he meets Kenny on the swim team. And what's interesting is that, you know, when the story starts off, it's very much like even the way they play with color is kind of like The Wizard of Oz, which, you know, is all about, you know, Judy Garland was a huge ally. We often say a friend of Dorothy's. And it's all about finding your chosen family. And so, like, as he meets Kenny, then the color starts to come into his life. And so here is a whole story about what does it mean to be gay, and to be a superhero and to be different. And I think it's probably a much better story to give and share. It's kind of the Love Simon of superhero comics.
Yeah,
I highly recommend
amazing.
this.
That's fantastic. I mean, did you ever think, you know what I mean? I mean, holy smokes. So yeah, clearly images matter. You know, that's why I think comic books can play such a special role in society. I think I hope we have more LGBTQ creators find their way into this business. I hope I keep learning and finding some good ones, finding some good stories. This is why I always have to talk to my friend Rob, because he is way more up to date on things than I am. Before we go, Jesse Lynch was talking about asking about the covers of the Batwoman stories. Like, you mean this art?
By J.H. Williams. Yeah, and there's another one over your shoulder there. And Jesse Lynch is correct. I mean, J.H. Williams is somebody who did not draw for a panel grid system.
No.
J.H. Williams really pushes the boundary with, and I hate to use these words because I know we talk about like fluidity, but I don't mean that from a sexuality standpoint, but
no.
But literally, actually, that character is the weeping woman, so there's water, so it's kind of inappropriate that talk about fluid. I mean, like nothing matches with a panel; things kind of blend together. I mean, and what strikes me is that was being produced for the monthly Detective Comics comic book at that level. That is not
amazing.
Quick turnaround production.
Yeah.
And there were very few delays with J.H. Williams and Greg Rucka, so I give the art or the creative team a lot of credit for doing a great story. And we should say that Batwoman, you mentioned this earlier, she becomes romantically involved with Renee Montoya and with Captain Maggie Sawyer.
Yeah.
And then later, actually, in the New 52, I don't know if you have this, but she has a great team up with Wonder Woman.
Oh.
That image of the weeping woman right there is just gorgeous.
You know, I gotta tell you, I have these books because I still need to pour over them. You know what I mean? Yeah. It rewards revisiting.
Absolutely.
And so I kind of run through stuff first for story, and then I get to like just drowned in the art, so to speak. So
and would you have ever imagined that there'd be a lesbian Batwoman live action TV show? We haven't even mentioned that.
Incredible. I mean, or Supergirl having a gay sister come out. I thought that arc, season 2, was remarkable. I thought it was handled so beautifully. Just absolutely stunningly. And the bisexual character on what's that other one? The show I actually don't watch. Yeah, but there's a bisexual character.
Is it Black Lightning?
No, it's Black Canary or White Canary, whatever her thing is. There's also a transgender character on Supergirl. So the CW shows, I know they have a lot of problems from a production standpoint and their creators and how they treat women, particularly on the staff. What's on the screen is they do a really admirable job. And so if, like I've said before, if you had told me when I was 13 and, avoiding that strange girl story, that you and I would be sitting here talking on, June 27th of 2020 and celebrating for a successful Pride Month in the United States and Pride Day, and having a wonderful chat about, how far the community has come in just these few decades. Well, I wouldn't have believed it. And there's the gray man. Look at him.
The gray man is here.
There he is.
Like Collecting Chaos is here too. That's great. I will say this, it's funny that comic you pulled up as a bad example of the story they would dare not to print.
Yeah.
We're going to, you and I today, we're daring DC Comics
exactly
hire these creators
Yep.
and Steve Orlando and Gail Simone and anyone at Phil Jimenez, and we're daring them to release a young romance one shot with this. You could put the same heading on the cover. The story
They dared
dare
us
you
to print.
dare not to print all LGBT with a question story, with a Alan Scott story, with Bonnie Tyler and Mary Robbins. I mean, we got to pitch that.
It is. We need something viral. So people who are watching this, figure some way out to get this idea into the right hands, because it's a. And
obviously release it in the month of June.
Yeah. You've got a year, DC, to get going on it. And,
we'll give them two. We'll give them two.
I'm patient. I'm pretty patient.
We've been waiting this long for a lot of things.
Exactly. Well, unless there are any other questions from the folks in the chat, by the way, thank you so much for joining us. We totally appreciate it. Rob
Actually,
and I
should ask. Yeah, like, does anyone have any
questions,
gay
comments,
characters or gay stories that they love that maybe you and I might know that we could comment on?
Did we? What did we miss? I guess
a lot. We've missed a lot. I mean, it's hard to cover all of it. I mean, even right now, if there's a romance between Harley Quinn and Poison Ivy. That's not why they're pointing guns at Batgirl.
Okay.
But I realized that's a really bad cover. I just wanted to brag that I have this.
I was just going to say slide that little humble brag right in there, Rob, and you could get her done. So, well, listen, thanks again, my friend Rob. This has been a blast, and I imagine we can come up with some other topics at some point to bring you back. And
we have to. Yeah, we're going to read Catwoman. We got Superman. We got to discuss.
Yep, there's more. There's always more. So, Jesse Lynch really enjoys this. Thank you for educating this grumpy old get off my lawn kind of guy. Jesse, you're very welcome, and thank you for tuning in. We had a ball. So, Rob, thanks again, and the rest of you, thank you. We will see you next time around. Okay. Bye. End broadcast.